Okay. Let's pick up the second half of the discussion of the Ashola of Maisi Yidoni. Ram has a question of why the Maisa Yidoni should be counted as two Asholas and Minyan Mitzvahs, according to his rule in Shurish Chi, that whenever you have the word lo is mentioned one time, and there are a group of items prohibited, all these items are one lav in Minyan Mitzvahs, because the Torah only has one time it says lo. See here also it says al tifnu el oivos ve'el yidonim. So it should be one lav. You see, but the Ram doesn't do that. See, I would have asked a more basic question. Since it's one inyan in Yoni Atera, and the oiv Yidoni are two expressions of that inyan, according to Sher Shvi, it should be one mitzvah. And that he doesn't ask, but he asked the question about Lav Shabbat. And the Ram answers the question, Ki hu kvar cholak oisam bezichron ha'oinish. Since he who kvar is referring to the Rebbeinu Shalom, kvar cholak oisam bezichron ha'oinish, v'yomar oiv oy yidoni. And the chiyuv skila, with chiyuv kores, with chiyuv b'chol echad mehem skila b'kores lemezid. So there's a separate skila and a separate kores. And v'hu omer yisala v'ish o isha ki yeh bohem oiv yidoni. Most you also, and it goes in each one separately. And since they're separate oinshin, there must be separate asholos. That is the thesis of the Rambam. He doesn't explain why, and he just leaves it like that. But besides the thesis, which we have to try to explain, there's something more, something also interesting. Is the Ram says that not only skila would generate separate skilas would generate two separate lavim, but also separate creases generate two separate lavim, which is interesting, and I'll explain to you why. See, first of all, before we explain, there is kores, because the Rambam quotes the pasuk of Mrs. Bezdin. The pasuk of kores is in Vayikol Chof, pasuk Vav, va'nefesh asher tifne el ha'oivos ve'el hayidonim liznos achreim nosati fonai es fonai benefesh hahu v'chrati oisai mikerev amoy. So that's kores. And there's a kores if it's our tifnei oivos, and or if he does el yidonim. There's a separate kores for each one, a separate separate Mrs. Bezdin. So I just like to explain the postulate that the Ram is working with and how it's working. The Ram is since there's a general rule of ein ancient el in ke masirin, so every time you have an einish, the Ram learns. See, normally we learn ein ancient ke masirin that it means that you can't have an einish unless there's an ashola. The Rambam learns that ein oinshim l'kimasirin means each separate einish requires a separate ashola, which is a chiddush. And therefore, since there's a separate Mrs. Bezdin for Oiv and a separate Mrs. Bezdin for Yidoni, V'ish or Isha, Yebehem Oiv or Yidoni, Mosi Masu. So therefore, there must be separate lavin. And the Ram extends this rule not only to Mrs. Bezdin, but also to Koris. And it probably rests on his discussion in Shurish Yudalit, where he talks about Einshem Kumasirin. He learns that Koris also requires an asol. And there are just two exceptions. Pesach and Mila. But it's not that you can prove from Pesach and Mila that Koris doesn't require an asol. There are two exceptions, but Koris in general requires an asol. And since Koris in general requires an asol, you can derive from the separate Chiyuv Koris that Oiv Yidoni is two separate mitzvahs in the mitzvahs. And it could be, let's continue the rest of it. V'loshen Sifra, Lefi Shiur Omer, V'isha o Isha ki yeh bohem oiv Yidoni, which is the Chiyuv Misas Bezdin, Oine Shamanu, as Hora Loi Shamanu, Tam Loimo, Al Tifnu, Eloivos Vel Yidonim. So it's an amazing shot in the Sifra. And the Ram's learning that the question of the Teres Kohanim, Uine Shamanu, as Horo Loi Shamanu, that it means that since they're two separate ancient, you require two separate asholos. And Al Tifnu Eloivos Yidoni refer to each one's independent. That's l'chayra what he's quoting from this. Otherwise, we don't understand what he wants. Now, just to see this principle again, the Rambam in Loisaseh Samuch, he says, Da sheheyois hamin hazeh min ashoros koil shnei dvorim oy shleisha eino mimin lav shebeklolis b'shvil shakosu beir ho'inish b'chol inyan v'inyan mehem v'yodanu behechach shekol inyan mehem muza mimenu ushehu mitzvos loisaseh kamo shebianu bahagdomo shesamnu lezeh hamama. And l'chayr is referring to Shurish Yudalit. There he says ein oinshim l'kimasirin, and he learns in ein oinshim l'kimasirin each individual einish requires an individual a individual household. And that is and he says it explicitly also in Shirish Chi'i. The Eno Nimna Heyois Lav Echod Mazi Midvom Rabim. That you don't make it like a general case where one lav is it prohibits us, enjoins us from many different actions. And it should be like lav shebeklolos. The Rambam says you count lav shebeklolos in one lav and minyan. As he says, by al teichu imenu no umuvushel b'moyim, and l'chayr the two things under the lav. There's no umuvushel. The Ram counted as one. So he says, why do you count it as one? When don't you count it as one? If the einish is explicitly said in every inyan v'inyan, so memela, you know that it's two separate lav. So Vakert, I would say then that Maima, what he says in Loisa says Samuch, it's based on Yudalit, but he's referring to Shirish Test, where he says it explicitly that wherever you have separate oinshim, you have separate households. So that is the Ram's thesis. It's an amazing take on Einshim Kamashirin, but that's what happens. Comes the Ramban, here he has an Asogus in Loisa Setes, and he's chaylik on the Etzim Yisrael of the Rambam. And he holds the Chilukim Misa is not Machalkim, one lav into two Ashoros, mitzvahs. And not a Chilukim Misa, also Chilukim Krisus. Says Kosovo Rav, va mitzvah Shiur hishin nanu, milasos Yidoni, va meniya bezeh al Tifnu al oives el Yidonim, ve'al tachshev shezeh hu lav shebeklolos, shevai frisham shezocha einish. That is quoting the Rambam. He says no, va'ani choishev bevadai shezeh hu lav shebeklolos. The Rambam's assumption is correct. It is a lav shebeklolos. Mimamom bigmos and hedgen ubekrisis maishno hocha diktani Yidoni umaishno hocha the lake tani Yidoni omabyechen hoilish name belavechon them. So the Gemara says that two things are one lav, and it is a lav shebeklolos, and he learns that hoilish name belavechon them. The Gemara says that it's a lav shebeklolos. Reish Lakish Omar hoil v'ein bohem bo maaseh. Reish Lakish my time Lama Rabbi Yechanan or Papa Chalukim hein b'misa. Rabbi Yechanan Chaluka de lav shmei Chaluka de misa lo shmei Chaluka. So the Gemara says mufurish that Chaluka de misa lo shmei Chaluka. Valacha he Rabbi Yechanan, because whenever there's a machlekes between Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yechanan, we pass Rabbi Yechanan. So the Ramban says, maybe I should count it as one mitzvah and disagree with the Rambam. So he says he counts it as two for a different reason. There's no akpoda that you can have one lav and learn out from it two mitzvahs if there are two things mentioned in a lav. The same way The Ramban counts no umavusho. Al tochu meno no umavusho. Even though there's one lav, there's one lo, al, one lao. But since there are two things mentioned a lav, mimela, it's two ashoras. And that Ramban says, it shows chi. And then also, in Asogas Ramban, in the end of Sefer HaMitzvos, on the Essen V'alav and Shesilek, he says, V'nimne halavim aboyim. So he's only mentioning those which he's what complements the lavim that he's masalik. He's masalik a certain number of lavim, so you have to have replacements. He says, V'nimne halavim aboyim v'amoni moavi, it's two. Lo yovo amoni moavi b'kal Hashem, there's one lav. B'yosem amon leisanu is two lavim. Nochi v'tzadik al ta'arek is two lavim. Nochi and tzadik. He called sold vash, and then lois like two merish Hashem, sold vash, and it's counted as two. Esnar mechir is counted as two. No mavushal is counted as two. Call echol the shtei miniyos moshe bi'anu bi'ikat chi. Okay, but he doesn't have to mention oiv Yidoni because that he's not disagreeing with the Ram. The Ram counts it as two. He counts it as two for very different reasons. Ram counts it as two because he learns the Einishim Misa is Machalik. And the Ramban says, no, the Einishim Misa is not Machalik. But when you have one lav with many pratim, it's many lavim in Minyan HaMitzvos. Now, let's go back to the point. So here it's clear we understand what they're disagreeing about. The question is, the Ramban's right. The Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan said, Chaluke lavim shmo chaluka, chaluke misa lo shmo chaluka. So the Gemara says, according to Rabbi Yochanan, the misa not machalkes. Okay, so this, I like to look at the Gemara creases and let's see, what we might be able to do with this. The Gemara creases, Daf Gimel Amud Beis, Dilma Beis Mises V'lav Echot Kamrit. Mahi, a case of two mises and lav echod. Mahi, what's the case? They're two separate mises and one lav. Oiv v'Yidoni. Amalei, the whole plukta, the Rabbi Yochanan v'Shlokish. This is a machlokes Rabbi Yochanan v'Shlokish, the tonu gabei and the skolim ba'aloi v'Yidoni. The interesting issue is that in the Mishnah Sanhedrin, when it mentions Oiv and Yidoni, it mentions Oiv and Yidoni separately. That's by Niskolim. In the list of Niskolim, Oiv and Yidoni is mentioned as two. For Kashlon, Umaish Kashno Gabi Skilos Tana Yidoni, V'Gabi Krisis Loi Tana Yidoni. In the Mishnah Krisis, it says Oiv, and it doesn't say Yidoni. So the Gemara answers, Rabbi Yochanan, Hoyel Ushneim B'lav Echonem. The reason why it's mentioned in the, not mentioned in the Mishnah Krisus, because Hoyel Ushneim B'lav Echonem. V'neima Yidoni name Baal Oiv. The Gemara asks, why does it pick one over the other? Maybe do Yidoni. The pasuk on the lav, in general, talks about Oiv first. So therefore, we mention Oiv. We have to mention one of the two. In Oiv, there's a Maisa. In Yidoni, there's no Maisa. So we mentioned this problem in the Rambam that it's very clear in Mitzvah Yud that Yidoni has a Maisa. My time and since the Chaluk B'Misa, Reish Lakish says, they should mention this too. Rabbi Yochanan Chalukin the Lav Avi Chaluka, Chaluka the Misa Lo Avi Chaluka. So if this was the only problem, you could have said that the Gemara increases, it has nothing to do with us. The Gemara increases, the discussion is, if it's Chaluka, the question is, you mechuyev a separate korban chatos. Because the Gemara's kashi is, why is it mentioned by Skilis over Yidoni separately, and it only mentions Oiv and not Yidoni by Krisis? And the discussion, the Mishnah Krisis, the Kiyam korban chatos. So maybe the whole machlikas of Yochanan Reish Lakish is whether misas are machalkes in chatoyes. And Rabbi Yochanan says beis misas are not machaya beis chatoyes. And Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish says yes, but in terms of chiluk lavim, because of the issue of lavshin of Eshkin Masira, and everyone would agree. That's what you could have said. But if that's the case, if you would have said like that, L'cheira, Ram should have paskin that if you do Oiv Yidoni beHelim Echad, you should only be chayiv chatas achas. Or because there's no chiluki chatas be'oiv bishum shemisa ena machalkes. Oh, even if Mises Machalkes, Chayv Achatas Achas, Mishum Oiv Upot Mishum Yidoni. Shein Ba Mais Kosh Lokish. Either you pass on Yochanan Reish Lakish, or Mother Shok is only one Chatos. That's what comes after the Gemara. However, the Ram turns the world upside down. It's mufurish in the Rambam that Oiv Yidoni are counted separately in the minyan of chatoyes and chayve klisa chatoyes. The Ram says in Hilchos Shkogos, Perek Aleph Halacha Dalet, Nims is Lomed. Nims is Lomed, Shekol, Huavelu Shayochid maybe Al Shiras Achatos, Kovua Aboim B'Sholosh. And he's talking about the Chiyuv Chatos. He says number 3 is Baal Oiv, and number 4 is Baal Yidoni B'Maaseh. So the Ram is mufurish, and he also is mufurish that there's a chiluk chatois by Oiv Yidoni when you made it beHelim Echad, as the Ram says mufurish in Hilchos Shkogos Perek Daled Halacha Aleph. Hoise averis harbe beHelim Echas. Chayv chatas akol achas ve'achas. Afilu osa ho aboim v'sholosh elu. Shemoninu behelam achas chayiv arboim v'shalosh chatois. So memela, oiv Yidoni is chayiv 2 chatois. So the Chayr calls according to Rambam the chayiv 2 chatois, which is both against Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish, and the whole discussion, the Ramban, the whole answer, everything falls off. So this is where we're standing, and it looks very bleak. So the Achronim point this out already, and let's see Ram Pirush Mishnayos increases. The Rambam in the Pirush Mishnayos increases in Perek Aleph, Mishnah Aleph. He says the following: Da she'eino moine ba'alocha zo ki im klolei inyonim ve'eniach hapirut. We only mention the general rule, but we're not interested in dealing with exceptions, with the specific cases. We're interested in the general rule. If there's some tziruf between the woman and the other one, nivelas. So v'nichlal b'zeh isha ubas beno, isha ubas bito, v'imo v'eim imo, v'eimo v'yo, ubitoi, ubas bitoi, ubas benoi. Because we're interested, this is the klal of Baal Isha Bita, and with some, we're not even mentioning, it includes many other things. Then it says like this: and you don't have to go specifically all the different cases of avodas that you chayiv for. That is avodas pnim, even shalokadaka. V'harbe zulas eila kamo shibianu b'shvi d'sanhedrin. And the other case is of avodah kedalka, whatever avodah zo it is. And then he says, "V'chein amur machalas haShabbos nichlu boy shleisha v'tisha krisos. Ki al kol av yesh chiyuv kores. Umin atoldes ma shetzar amokim lemnoiser kan kamo shibianu b'shvi d'Shabbos." So he mentioned the klal, and not the prat. And this l'cheira is based. So the Ram is learning pshat in the Gemara. There's a mandioma ravacha berei deravika mishmei derabei boy. That the Mishnah is moina Shem Shabbos v'Shem Ishu Bita, and that's the klal of the Mishnah. What it means is that he's moina the klal and not called prat and prat. That's what he learns this pshat, and the Ram bases his Pirush Mishnayos on Ravacha B'rei Dravika B'Shmei Derabei. That's the more increase of Ravacha B'rei Dravika B'Shmei Derabei boy increases Gimel Beis. Omar Tana Shem Shabbos B'Shem Avodah Zorah. Ketoni. Mimai Midiktoni Abal Ishu Bita Bial Eishes Ish V'ho Yesh Bita Menasosai V'Lektoni Lo Amri Diksivin Toni V'Leksi V'Lektoni V'Ika Bas Ishtoi Ubas Bitoi Ubas Beno Diksiva V'Lektoni El Shem Ishu Bita Ketoni. Ochinami Shem Shabbos Shem Avodah Zorah. That is what we have in the And if you read, we'll see in Ram Pirush Mishnah, and this will be the amazing thing. The Ram says this answer is the explanation of why the Mishnah doesn't say Oiv and Yidoni, it just says Oiv. Because it mentions the cloud and doesn't get involved in the prat called prat and prat. And that's, I'm reading the Rambam in the Pirush Mishnah there. V'chein b'sibazo histapek b'yomu bal Oiv lo hiski Yidoni. It's mamish the same shot. V'hu inyan omram hoil u'b'shneim b'lav echad nemu. He learns shot Rabbi Yochanan hoil u'shneim b'lav echad nemu al tifnu al Oiv vel Yidoni. V'reishi the kronokat. It's we're mentioning the cloud and not the prat. Klema ha'oiv ha'omu b'tchilas ha'posik v'hu meire al ma she'achar. So it's an amazing thing, like the Gemara turns upside down. The Gemara seemed to say that the machlekes is whether Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish b'chilukei misa, is it machalek in chatoyos? But he says once you can interpret the Rabbi Yochanan is saying over like Aracha be'Ravika, Mishmei the Rabbi boy, which we had already before in Avodah Zarah and Arayis, the time of Yochanan is holding ulav echad. And that's a biur that the Shem Oiv is clearly also Yidoni. So once you say that, even though I introduced it before, it's very, you have to leave the Gemara and see how you do it exactly. That's what's happening over here. There's no hechach anymore to say the shtickle Torah that the machlekes which the Gemara presents, machlekes of Reish Lakish is about chilukei misa. But no, Rabbi Yochanan is saying a whole new is going like Rav Achmed Aviv B'Shem Rabbi boy, that the pshat is they will only mention the cloud. So once you only mention the cloud, you could be chayav achatas on each one, and it's irrelevant. If you're explaining chatoyos the way the Gemara increases seems to say, and the question is why, and everything that's mentioned is chayav achatos. So then you have Rabbi Yochanan, and then Rabbi Yochanan is saying the chilukei misa is not the excuse me, that chilukei misa is not. That's why it only mentions the oiv. And Rabbi Reish Lakish says no. It says so. You have to say chilukei misa is not a chiluk. But once you say that you're mentioning the cloud, not the prat, you can say chilukei misa is a chiluk. But we don't mention both because we only mention the cloud, not the prat. The same way we did Avodah Zarah and Arayis. And it's an amazing thing. The Ram takes the liberty because we accept this shot as far as Avodah Zarah and Arayis to say that this is the pshat in Rabbi Yochanan. Even the Gemara seems to be saying just the opposite. And the truth is, the Minchas Chinuch asked this kasha, how does the Ram called the Ram Pirush Mishnayos in Mitzvah Reish Nun Vav Ois Gimel, and he buys by Tzorchim. But however, the Osameach and the Shkoga is Perek Dal Aloch Aleph, the Avodas HaMelech in Hilchos Avodah Zarah Perek Bob Aloch Aleph seem to say that the Ram is going with the Pirush Mishnayos. The problem is, I don't know if they mentioned this, but reading the Gemara is a little difficult. The Ram seems to be saying this. Now further, so that l'cheira. So once you say that, the Gemara could say the chilukei misas according to everyone, because of that, it is just like Reish Lakish says that it's mentioned Oiv and not Yidoni because it's ain't boy Maisa. But Yochanan says it mentioned Oiv, not Yidoni, even the Chayiv Chatos Yidoni. And why you Chayiv Chatos? Because Chiluk and Misa is Machalik. But it's just that the Shem, he mentions the cloud, not the cloud. It's an amazing thing. I can turn the Gemara. It's a mistaba. I just as a Mayam Muska. If we were editing the Talmud, we were part of the Amoraim or something. We're editing the Talmud. So I imagine that you can say such a thing. What's the heck of the sense? Rabbi Yochanan has never said anything. We just know that they disagree about something. The Mo is explaining, what are they talking about? So if for once, but that's in a vacuum, you could say it like that. But once the Gemara has the cloud of, you mentioned the cloud and not the prat, and we accept it by Avodah Zarah and by Arayis, there's no reason that you shouldn't say it here. But to take the Gemara and to reinterpret Rabbi Yochanan in context of that, even though the Gemara seems to say the opposite, is a chiddush nif. Next. Now, then the last line in this mitzvah, ve'oiva alav zeh, ve'oiva alav zeh, gam kein b'shoigeg, chayiv chatus kovur. So the same way you chayiv kores, and as a lav, he's chayiv chatus kovur. So it's what the Ram says is Mefuish Rambam that the same way there's a chiv chatas kavua in Baloi, there's also chiv chatas kavua in Bal Yidoni or Maisi Yidoni. And the Ram passes this in Hilchos Avodah Zarah. Perek Vav Aloch Aleph. Hoise Oiv O Yidoni Utzoni Bezodon Chayv Koles. Imhoyu Shnei Eidim Asro Niska. Hoyeshoigeg Meini Chatos Kavua. The only problem is that the Rambam Paskins, that Chatas requires a Maisa. And therefore, he says that Magadev, to less pay Maisa, is part of the Machatas. As the Rambam says in Hilchos Shkogus, right towards the beginning. In Perek Aleph Halacha Beis. So the Chayra, you have to include from this that the Rambam was of the opinion that Yidoni has a Maisa, otherwise, and it's not like Reish Lakish. In Sanhedrin, Samachei, Omen Aleph, and pieces Gimel and Beis. We mentioned Reish Lakish before. And therefore, you chayiv chatos. And that you would also include like that, then what the Rambam says in Hilchos Avodah Zarah, and here in Minyan HaMitzvos, that he mentions a Maisa by Yidoni very explicitly. There's a Maisa Aktorah in Mishatera, there's a Maisa Aktorah, and Achizas Hodas B'Yodav and Akosai, as the Rambam says in Perek Vav, Haloch Aleph and Beis, Ketzru Maisa Oiv, Zoy Medu Maktik Teres Yedua, V'oiches Shavit Shel Hodas B'Yodav Minifoy. Ketzru Maisa Yidoni, Maniach Etzem B'Shmo Yedua, V'fiv, Umaktir, V'oisem Maisa Macherim. So it's very clear there's a Maisa. How he's going to learn Reish Lakish? Reish Lakish has a different Yidoni than the Rambam has. It's very odd to say there's an issue in the Gemara. I don't say that. But the more difficult issue is the Rambam is saying himself. Because if I look at the Ram in Hilchos Avodah Zarah, I would conclude one thing, that Yidoni is chayav achatos because Yidoni by definition has a ma'isa. However, in Hilchos Shkogos, he seems to have a different approach. And in Mashma, you have the possibility of Yidoni without a ma'isa. I'm not sure if you have possibility Yidoni without a ma'isa. How can he define Yidoni as having a ma'isa? I just don't get it. But the Rambam in Perek Aleph of Hilchos Shkogos, Halacha Daled, when he mentions Chiyuv v'chatos in the Averos, Muvar Arayis, v'eilu hein. Here they are. Ho'eved avodah zarah b'ma'aseh, because you have an option without a ma'aseh. Kabbalah Seluhus. Okay. Hanoisim mizar l'moilech. That's a ma'aseh. Bal oiv, ma'aseh. So maktir. And then he says, Bal Yidoni b'ma'aseh. That means there are two cases. There's a case of Bal Yidoni with a ma'aseh, which is chayav v'chol v'chatos, and a Bal Yidoni without a ma'aseh is not chayav v'chol v'chatos. How this works, the Ram Hilchos Avodah Zarah, I just don't get it. In terms of Kabbalah Seluhus, that's not told the Maisa, you're not chayav v'kol. I think we mentioned this once. That's the Rambam in Hilchos Shkogos, Perek Aleph, Halacha Beis, Lefikach HaMakabel Avodah Zarah Beloha, Af al pi shu chayav koles, im ho yemezid, niskal, v'im kibo v'shkoga poto min hakorban, fi sheloi osa ma'isa, v'nema b'asei sachas. There's a din ma'isa, not only by Megadif, but that would be the two of Makabel Be'eloha. But what happens in Yidoni? Does the Yidoni with a ma'isa, without a ma'isa? I don't know where you get this from, or what this is. And it sounds like Reish Lakish, but it can't be Reish Lakish either. Because Reish Lakish seems to say, in Yidoni, there's no Chiyuv Chatas. And even the way you learn the Gemara, in Rabbi Yochanan, there's always a Chiyuv Chatas. And comes the Ram and says, no. Sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't, with a mice, without a mice. This, I don't know the answer. Now, let's do now the next mitzvah. We'll start it and see what happens. At least let's read it, and then maybe we'll talk about it a little more, see exactly how far we get. HaMitzvos asiris, he shehizhilnu min hateis ach avodah zarah, to go after avodah zarah. Or the Kapach translates lifnois. Because the pasuk says al tifnu, but it means when you're involved in avodah zarah, to be involved in avodah zarah. Umeis asek b'sipureha, and to be involved in the for example, Greek mythology. Okay, reading Greek mythology. So I'm not getting involved in the issue, or just derech agav, where Mendel used to say that it's mutter because avodah zarah shebitla. But if it wouldn't be avodah zarah shebitla, there's a problem. But reading the mythology of any avodah zarah which is kayemes, l'chayr is a problem. Roitza loima b'zeh ho'iyun v'his afshurus kruchanis aplonis. This tered al to'akach v'sasekach. So this is very difficult to read. So first of all, okay. Or iyun is the sort of the iyun vis afshus kuruchonis, and the whole thing doesn't make any sense. So I think there's something missing over here. I don't know, something was not translated. The Kapach has it for iyun vashinun bioisin hazoyis va'avolim. Getting involved, thinking about it, learning about it, working on it. Shoimim miasdeho sheruchonis. Those the approach that the miasdeho, those who founded this cult, say that there are the havolim that they say about this avodah zarah. You go on and on and on about it, and it says tered al toya kach v'sasa kach moridin oisa b'ofen kach v'oz tase kach. It tells you it's a handbook of avodah zarah. If you say this incantation, you bring down the avodah zarah, and it will do X or Y. So there's something wrong, something missing over here. You see, this aspus guchanis haplonis teirid al toekach doesn't make any sense. Visase, it the way it will come down over here where you're doing these incantations, and it will do Y. Visase kach. V'oz, and that kapach has v'oz. If you do the proper incantations, v'oz tasekach. V'akoich aploni yiktulo v'yamdu lefonov al toyakach v'yase ador aploni. There's a certain way you have to be maktir, and a certain way you have to stand before the avodah zarah, and the avodah zarah will do Y. Then there's another line which is very difficult to read in Ibn Tibban. Doesn't make any sense. But Kapach translates the incantations, the way to bring the avodah zarah down, and what it does if you do it. So it's mamish, the handbook, the avodah zarah handbook. And then he continues. כי המחשבה באלו הדבורים והעיון באויסן הליצונוס, and thinking about this, or being involved in this stupidity, or this whatever leitzonus, whatever leitzonios, okay, who ma shi'oirer ha'odom levakesh oisam v'avoidosam. This will cause man to be look into them and dig deep and deeper into them, and to be over them. This is working with the translation of Tibban. Haleitsanios hu mashia oire ha'odom levakesh oisam v'avoidosam. So in Kapach adimyonis mima shemoire es hapesi, that the simpleton lidresh oisam uliovdo. So now they started dimyonis, this fantasy. Will get the Pesi involved in going after the avodah zarah and to be able to avodah zarah. Now, Vakosu, she his here boy, Mizer Inyan, who Amr al Tifnu el haElilim. don't be intellectually involved with avodah zarah. HaElilim apsol. Al tifnu elo haElilim. So according to the Rambam, this is a law to think about the avodah zarah and to be involved and to delve into the avodah zarah. Because of the chashash, you're going to be over avodah zarah. The Ramban in Chumash on the pasuk al tifnu haElilim in Vayikra Yutes Dalit, will be loshin v'im yifne levovcho asher ponu levovoi pina yoim yoima shelo yifne libo be'haElilim ulahamin shieh bohem toeles. You shouldn't be involved in the haElilim, and that you might come to believe that there is some toelis. O shiavo asidus asher yisnabu behem. The whole thing is believing that there's something to it. That itself is the problem. Avol yiyu heim v'chol ma'aseim efes b'tohu be'enov. V'lo yisavu asidus rak b'zeis elyon. That's the way he interprets the law of Chumash. So the chayri is, it's the law of the mitzvah say, which the Ramban adds of Tom Tiyeh. As the Rambam has in the Shichas Asay, mitzvah ches, shenitztavinu liyos levovenu tomim, imo yis'ale, v'amoy Tom Tiyeh im Hashem Elokecha. V'inyan atzavo, what's this mitzvah of Tom Tiyeh? As is, sheinachi lovenu, our hearts are in Elov levado yis'ale. Ushenamin shehu levado yis'akol. V'hu hayedei amitis kol osid. Mimenu levado nidrosh habos midavio. O me'anshi chasido. What's the mitumim? V'loi nidrosh me'hoibrei shamayim. It's only HaKadosh Baruch. And that's what he's saying before, that the avodah zarah, all the maisim are batel mevuto. Everything is b'gzeis elyon. It could be that the Ramban himself is saying it's the Sefer HaMitzvos. If you look back in Shiur Dalet, where the Ramban is mevayed this lav, the das harav, he says. Look what he says. I'm reading the words in Shiur Dalet. V'im kain hadovo beperish halav hazeh roy li'imonis ki inyan shemona harav al tifnu haElilim. Minia shelo yovinu b'inyono v'lo yishma ma shisapa lehem klal kidei shelo yispate mehem. And l'cheira, see, look at his lashon. What is it? In Cain, Adobo beferish halav hazeh roy lihimonos ki inyan shemon harav al tifnu haElilim. What do you mean ki shemon harav al tifnu haElilim? He also counts al tifnu haElilim. So I thought maybe that he means ki sherav shemon al tifnu haElilim in the way he interprets it. Miniya shel yovinu minyonim or yishma ma shisapu aleim klal kedei shel yispat aleim. And maybe according to the Ramban, it's something different. The problem is, this all sounds very good. The Ramban might have a different interpretation. He doesn't say anything over here because his job in Asogis is not to tell us what the lavim are. The question is, what's the minyan? Is this lav in the minyan or is not in the minyan? And that's what he's in Chumash seems to be a different lav, and that lashon in Shemon Arav in Shurish Chi in Shurish Rubi might point to it. However, if you look further in the Ramban al Atera, he says that in this lav there's an Isa Stakus. And l'cheira, istaklus is not because you believe that. Why should you also istaklus? The question is how you look at the avodah zarah. Do you believe there's something to it, or you don't believe something to it? And our Tifnu haElilim is believing there's something to it. So what does istaklus have to do with this? So l'cheira, it comes out according to Rambam the opposite, that if you have istaklus, even though you believe that they don't have any toelis, there's nothing in them, it's still awesome. V'kach omu rabbisenu diuknis asmoi also l'stakel behen mishum shenemar Tifnu haElilim. Hichnisu afilu istaklus behen b'chlal lo isa shelo yitein daito b'inyonam klal. Daito b'inyonam klal. What does it do? See, I'm just not sure how. See, if you learn that to be involved in them, so I understand the segue to Histakus. But if the Isa is believing that there's something to it, so what's the problem of istaklus? Silu Tanaya also draisa that if you're going to mistakel, maybe you believe there's something to it, like a chocha. This requires a little work. I thought the question is certainly interesting. Then, just to keep in mind, the Rambam goes on over here, and L'chair has a mefurish Sefer to say what he said. L'loshen Sefer, im atapoin achreim hatoisa isen elohus. Okay. So, had the Rambam stopped over here, I would have said, fine and dandy, no problems. Very simple thing. Nulav Shalom Yisrael. The problem is, what he wants. What does he want from Yehuda? What does he want with the Gemara and Shabbos? How is he interpreting the Gemara and Shabbos? What difference does it make? Then he goes on and has a new pshat in the pasuk. He says Krishma every day, twice a day. And he says, Yishomer lochem pen yiftel levavchem v'saltem. What is Yishomer lochem pen yiftel levavchem? So comes the Ram and says it's a law of machshov and avodah zarah. Amazing thing how you learn the pasuk. And then the question upentisa einecha shomayim or barisa as Hashem is yereach. Look at the Rambam over here. Look at Rashi and Chumash, and then upentidrash leEloheim leimo eicho yavdu agoyim oeles Eloheim v'esa ken gamoni. See what the Rambam is doing, and compare and contrast it to Rashi and Sanhedrin Samach Beis Div Master Echad Oived, and the Ramban and Chumash in Shmos Chav Gimel Chav Dalet, and Rashi Alatera in Dvorim Yud Beis Lamed. So Mitzvah Hashem will pick this up next week.